The Punisher star Ben Barnes on his Season 2 transformation and fate. It felt inevitable, Barnes says of the last confrontation between Frank Castle and Billy Russo. This story contains major spoilers from Netflix's The Punisher Season 2, including the finale. On the basis of his crimes, there's no way Billy Russo, Ben Barnes, should have made it out of The Punisher's first season alive. Jon Bernthal's vigilante Frank Castle has more reason to kill Billy than just about anyone else in the world, having discovered that his former best friend and brother-in-arms sanctioned the slaying of Frank's family. But after a brutal final confrontation that ended with Frank mutilating Billy's face with a fairground mirror, he leaves Billy alive, not out of mercy, but because being forced to live with brain damage and facial disfigurement is a punishment worse than death for a narcissist like Billy. Season 2 picks up with Billy recuperating in hospital with no memory of his own villainous actions, his face hidden behind a black and white mask which represents his transformation into the iconic comic book villain Jigsaw. Though his facial scars are less extreme than fans of the comics or The Punisher, Warzone movie may expect, the Netflix drama's focus is on the psychological Jigsaw inside Billy's head. He thinks he's got a traumatic brain injury from his time in the forces, so he remembers Frank being his best friend, and then nothing, star Barnes tells The Hollywood Reporter. He still believes there's a heroic element to his story. But despite his amnesia, Billy soon ends up back on the same path of ruthless destruction and violence, aided and abetted by his manipulative therapist Krista, Floriana Lima. Below, Barnes speaks with The Hollywood Reporter about the show's psychological approach to Jigsaw, how the child abuse in Billy's past shaped him and, major spoiler alert, why he had to die in the season finale. Did you know from the beginning of playing Billy what his second season progression into Jigsaw would look like? I knew that the first season would be a lot of Burberry suits and hair gel and keeping smirks to a minimum, trying to keep some ambiguity in terms of his villainous intent. In the second season, I had much more free rein in every direction, and the self-loathing and psychopathy was the thing that really interested me. His mini-arc is about losing his sense of self, not recognizing himself when he looks in the mirror and kind of loathing what he sees, the fall of narcissism. And then, does the character just seep back into his narcissistic ways regardless? Are we who we are regardless of experience, regardless of memory? My pitch for Season 2 was, can we have a Memento quality to this character, but if Guy Pearce had a machine gun? We ended up with something quite close to that, in terms of Billy's partial amnesia, and the way it allows him to almost play the hero again in his own mind. The biggest thing Billy has forgotten is his role in the deaths of Frank's family. I still don't feel like I have a good understanding of his motivations for that. It's such an insane betrayal. It is, but it's also a grey area. He wasn't there, he didn't pull the trigger, he just knew about it and didn't say anything. In the current climate, that to me is interesting, is not saying something as bad as being a perpetrator. In our show, it kind of is, and from Frank's perspective it is. You might as well have pulled the trigger, because you're looking out for yourself prevented you from doing the right thing, and that feels like a very contemporary issue. The jigsaw mask Billy wears in the early episodes is a part of his therapy. Where did that idea come from? There's an article in National Geographic about these masks, which was the most interesting thing I read in preparation for this season, and I wanted there to be more talk about it in the show, but of course you've got to also have time for John kicking people in the head. It talks about these masks as a new therapy for war veterans, and the idea that you could artistically make something that would be a representation of how you feel on the inside, and that would allow you to open up a bit more and move toward talking about your experiences. I know there will be people who are disappointed with how Billy's face looks after the finale of the first season, but I think it makes for a much more watchable show, and makes you work a bit harder to work out what's going on in his head. I've seen people talking about the way Jigsaw looks compared to the Warzone comics, because it's not as gruesome. I did kind of want to make that version, so that he could be really gnarly in the face and really angry and all spit and bile and gunpowder. But the truth is, given the way we do plastic surgery these days, and it's a very grounded show, you don't want a character who can't walk down the street without people screaming, so this mask was a way.